What is up, everybody? How we doing today? Hope this video finds you well. Today I want to talk about what makes a good coach or a good martial arts, teacher or even practitioner, right? And the reason this topic I'm talking about this topic is because recently it's become more of a thing to say, or I've been hearing lately that people say that you can't teach what you haven't done, right? And this is in quotations because a lot of the teachers, a lot of the this is mostly in boxing where people say that. People say that you can't teach boxing if you yourself haven't been a professional boxer, right? And in certain ways, I do agree with it, but in certain ways, I don't agree with it. And and I'm going to talk about those things right now. Because both of these are good. I don't lean towards one side or the other. I think both of these are good, but I feel like right now in this moment, the ones that need to be attacked are the ones that believe that only boxers should talk about boxing, because they're not only talking about teaching boxing, they're talking about talking about boxing, simply just speaking about boxing. To them, an ex-boxer's word is worth more than a non-boxer's, and that's crazy to me. And it even goes into if you could look at what Oscar De La Hoya is talking about, and Mayweather. Those guys don't like each other, but they agree in the sense that they don't think that someone that hasn't been in boxing should be a promoter, which in my opinion is also just as crazy. So this is a mentality of arrogance. It's a mentality of it's just a stupid mentality. It's mainly an arrogance, and people that have too much arrogance, they have too much of an inflated ego. And if you look at Oscar and Mayweather, I mean, I'm pretty much describing them. But what happens with these people that have an inflated ego like that is that they're unable to empathize with others. They're unable to see the bigger, larger picture, and they make it all about themselves rather than about the fighters, rather than about the people that they're supposed to be taking care of and helping. So getting back to coaching and getting back to teaching someone with that much arrogance, and I have fallen into that trap as well, to where I want to make it about myself, to where I want to get more credit and I want to get more emphasis, for helping someone or teaching someone. I'm the master, and I have to be respected because I taught you everything. Like that kind of stuff, is bad. And that's not good for a teacher. And I'm talking about a lot of people that feel this way. Especially in the world of boxing. I'm pretty sure in MMA it's probably the same way. In some martial arts circles as well. I've heard a lot of things about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. How they've turned into a bit of a cult. And that's what happens with that type of mentality. Like in the old ways of karate and the old ways of even Chinese martial arts, they really didn't have a system of progression. They really didn't have a system of, okay, now you're in this level, now you're in that level, now you're a superior level. Nobody could touch you. That's a Western mentality. That's a Western way of thinking. In the Eastern way of thinking, or the more Asian way of thinking, they really don't measure in that way because they just measure in the sense of the things that they see. Meaning, we have a bunch. They would have like a bunch of guys gathered together, and most of them didn't have gis. They didn't have nothing. They would just practice in their underwear or in their shorts, um, and practice karate that way. That was the preferred way of doing it. It wasn't no gis. It wasn't no red belts, black belts, blue belts. All of that. All of that is most of that is bullshit made to make people feel like they're better than others and to make people feel like they're progressing in some kind of way. But really, the only way you could really find out if you're a true black belt or a true master of your art is if you feel comfortable knowing the ins and outs of your own physical body, of your own physical being. Meaning, can I throw a jab when I want to correctly? Do I know all of the uses of a jab? Do I know all of the uses of a side kick? Do I know all of the uses of a karate chop? Do I know when to use it? Do I know when not to use it? Do I know what to do when I'm not attacking? So that's a big part too. Some people don't know what to do when they're not doing nothing. When they're not attacking, they don't know what to do. So there's Master Uguay right there. I don't know why I got him on here, but um, but there's like an epidemic that's going on in boxing. And if you look at boxing right now, okay, let's get into boxing. The reason boxing is in a decline here in the U.S. is because of that. It's because it's gotten into a mentality of ranks, and it's gotten into a mentality of lineages. All right, and that's why that's the killer to most martial arts is when they start thinking in that way. They start thinking in a sense of, what level are you? Are you this level? Are you that level? You're lesser than me because of this. You're lesser than me because of that. When really all martial arts have to understand that a white belt could beat, a black belt sometimes. It is possible because it's not about the belt you have on. It's about how good that person is, how they're able. Like, for example, me personally, I'm not saying that I'm wise or anything like that, but my mind has always worked in a way to where if you teach me something, say you teach me how to throw a kick, in my brain, I'm already thinking I could use this here, I could use this there, and also I'm thinking the ways that you could defend certain techniques. Now, I don't say it because I know sometimes it bothers some people, and I don't ask that many questions. Also, because some teachers, they don't like to hear that many questions. But in my head, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking, or for example, if I read the Bible, and the verse says something, but in my mind, I'm breaking it down. I'm breaking it down in parable form. I'm breaking it down in lyrical form, and I'm breaking it down in different ways of understanding the word, even in numbers type of way. Um, and but what I'm trying to say is like the ego is a problem. Okay, now does that mean that the ego is bad? Um, it can't be bad because it's part of every human. Okay, so it's necessary, in my opinion, for our survival. But the thing is, when it gets too big, like for example, these fighters like Oscar De La Hoya, Mayweather, that are now promoters, in order for them to be great fighters, they have to have an ego. They have to, because that's the only way they're going to be able to even defend themselves. That's the only way they're going to be able to even try to get theirs back and have that mentality of, if you don't have ego, somebody will punch you in the face and you'll be like, okay, I'm cool. You got yours, man. It's like, for example, Jamal Charlo. I don't know if it's Jamal or Jamel. He doesn't want his lick back from Caleb Plant because his ego has been so depressed. That's the other end of the spectrum, that he doesn't want to take the fight or get back into boxing. You know what I mean? So, and that's what happens when the ego is so low. That's what happens. But at the other end of the spectrum, the reason boxing is suffering now is because all of these ex-boxers are making it about them, and they're using their fighters as pawns in order to block each other from fights, in order to damage each other, strategically. And you see it all over the place, man. You see it all over the place. So this mentality that these ex boxers have, or these boxers have, that you have to be an ex boxer to teach, has been proven wrong time and time again. And for a long time, it wasn't even a thing, especially in the past. It wasn't a thing to believe that. It was very common to see people that weren't boxers become trainers, and they were very successful. And I have a bunch of examples, tons of examples. I feel like when a martial arts or a people start to believe their own hype, that's when the martial arts starts to die, because they don't let independent fighters come in. They don't let independent teachers come in. They don't let. It's all about the ex-boxers, right? And the ex-boxers have too much of an ego. They have to have too much of an ego, because that's what makes them. That's what makes that person good at fighting, is that they have a big ego. They have a huge ego, and that combined with the ability to push themselves to become better is what makes them, good fighters. But on the other hand, that is what makes them bad teachers. Why? Because their ego doesn't give them good patience. Their ego doesn't let them think outside of their own selves. It does not let them think, have empathy. It does not allow them to have the possibility of maybe they're wrong. Okay, so all of these things are things that a coach should have. Why? Because he's doing that for his fighter. His fighter needs to think, seek, destroy, seek, destroy. That's what the fighter needs to think. All of that other shit is carried by the coach. Okay, you can't let your fighter be thinking about, maybe I'm doing this wrong. You can't let your fighter be thinking about, I should suppress my ego and stuff like that. So in some type of ways, yes, that is good, but that is left for the coach to carry for his student, right? That's why he's in charge of the water. He's in charge of all of this other stuff, because he wants his fighter to be 100% concentrated on the fight, and I have to be preoccupied about wrapping him his own hands, not to be preoccupied of, are my gloves correctly. All of this other stuff has to be secondary for the fighter. But and there's lots of examples, guys, of people that weren't boxers that have become great trainers. So this idea that you have to have done it. Listen, and I don't want to be mean, but some of the worst coaches in the world that I've seen are ex-boxers. Okay, and that is, I'm not capping at all, dude. I have seen some crazy shit. Now, not all the time. Like, for example, George Benton, he's one of the most influential coaches ever in boxing. And he was an ex-boxer. Now, some people say that he wasn't that good at boxing. I think he was. But in my opinion, he's one of the most influential. So like I said, it's not. I'm not saying, for one or the other, but the ones that are being attacked the most are the ones that do it on their own. They weren't necessarily ex-boxers. Like Reynoso is an example. I don't believe that he was an ex-boxer. All right, now, And the reason I know that is because Oscar De La Hoya always attacks, not just Oscar, but I think Mayweather as well. They always attack. Um, as soon as Canelo loses a fight, or as soon as Devin Haney loses a fight, they always go for that. Oh, well, Devin needs a real coach in his corner. You know, it's about time. Bro, look how far Devin made it, you know. Most boxers that have professional boxers in their corner, they don't even make it that far. So it has nothing to do with your coach being an ex-professional boxer. It has nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it. But this is the mentality that American boxing has right now, and it's part of the reason why it's killing the sport, in my opinion, because the fighters start becoming secondary, and the teachers start becoming primary, and that is already a recipe for disaster. You know, sometimes it's better that the master not know that he's a master. You know, sometimes it's better that a master teaches through accidentally, you know, or teaches through showing. But as soon as the master knows that he's a master and he has something to give, a lot of times that's when he starts to get full of himself. That's when he starts to um, follow over his own steps. You know what I mean? And that's what I think is happening in boxing. But really quick, guys, I'm gonna go over what I think you should look for in a coach or in a martial arts teacher. And it's gonna be about 5 things. Okay, number 1 is patience. Number 2 is empathy. Number 3 is alertness. And number 4 and 5 are gonna be together. It's knowledge and wisdom. And the reason knowledge and wisdom are together is because you could know, but you can't. It's a difference between knowing something and knowing how, when, and why to use it, and also knowing that that one thing isn't going to be enough sometimes. Meaning that you never stop learning. You never stop, even if you have a black belt or your 15th degree black belt in Brazilian butt waxes. You know, there's always going to be somebody that knows something that you don't. Right? There's always going to be someone who has cracked an egg successfully doing the opposite of what you do. You know, and knowing that is wisdom. You know, the thing is, you need to have those other things first in order to even get to what I'm talking about here. Because if you don't have humility, right? If you don't have patience, if you don't have empathy, you're never going to realize that. You're going to be stuck in your own head and thinking corkscrew punches are the only way to throw punches. You know, when for a long time, Jack Dempsey was advocating for vertical punches similar to Wing Chun punches. You know, so then you start thinking, okay, but this guy used to knock people out in the streets for like $2. You know what I mean? He would do it all the time, and it was easy for him, and he would advocate for vertical punches. But now you go to a gym and you tell somebody, I'm gonna punch like this vertically, and they're like, how dare you? This is the only way to do it. You know what I mean? So, and then you got the others that said horizontal. Horizontal is the only way. But if you've ever been in a fight, you know, if you ever experienced at least sparring, which by the way I recommend everybody does. You know, it's eye opening. It promotes respect amongst your peers. It makes people more respectful. You're not gonna be you know, talking shit all the time or being irresponsible with your words. Or why? Because you know what it feels like to get punched in the face. You know, that's why I think everybody should spar. Everybody should fight a little. especially if you're a man, and women too. In fact, you know what? I think women should start punching each other in the face every once in a while, because it'll make them more respectful. Because a lot of children and females, they are disrespectful because they don't know the consequences of violence, and it's necessary in society to know that if you act wrong, sometimes some people ain't gonna be down with it. Um, but Nacho Bernstein is another guy also that was not a boxer, I believe, and he trained a lot of legendary boxers. Two in particular that I remember: Finito Lopez and um, what's his name? I forget his name. Marquez. Um, but anyways, guys. Um, but yeah, you just gotta understand that stuff, guys. Now, some of these things can be quantified. Some of these things, you just have to look for and see. Everybody makes mistakes, guys. Even coaches do. Just as your coaches are patient with you, you got to be patient with them. Everybody has different teaching techniques. Some people yell and curse. Some people, like myself, use try to get to people using different terms. um, but yeah, knowledge. Like I said, knowledge is knowing something, right? And wisdom is knowing um, that someone else knows something, and not only that, knowing 3 or 4 different ways to use something, and knowing when not to use something. And the best way it's like the best way I can explain it. It's like for example, you know how to throw a jab, right? They taught you how to throw a jab, but do you know when not to throw a jab? Do you know when um, the different ways to use a jab? Use it for distance. And there's the guys that I'm talking about that were ex boxers. I've know a couple of them, and I'm gonna show you some examples of how you could be an ex boxer and not be a good coach. One ex boxer once said that there's no such thing as mixing offense and defense together. And I could show you 1,000 examples. Not 1,000. I'm exaggerating. But I could show you 2 examples of mixing offense and defense at the same time. It's called interception. It's very simple, but this guy is so stuck in his ass that he says there's no way that offense and defense. And he says it so sure. He's so sure of himself. These guys. He's like, there's no way that offense and defense can be mixed because offense is offense and defense is defense. And it's like, oh my God, is my mind supposed to be blown right now? Because it's not. Listen, if you've been in a fight, you know that you can mix offense and defense together. Like I just said, the most basic way I can tell you is interception. Your opponent attacks, you attack at the same time as you block. Bruce Lee, literally, Wing Chun is the master of mixing offense and defense. And Bruce Lee's intercepting fist is about that. Block on one side and punch at the other side at the same time. That's literally mixing offense and defense. So, and it's in boxing too. Look at Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence. Literally the whole fight. The reason I knew Terrence Crawford was going to win was because he was mixing offense and defense within the fight. The thing is, it is a bit of an advanced technique because the first thing you learn in every martial arts is block then attack, defend then attack, defend then attack. That's the first thing. That's the first level. All right. Then it's create your own attacks before they even attack, and then last but not least is attack as they attack. And that takes a little bit more skill. Why? Because you're gonna be blocking and attacking at the same time, or evading and attacking at the same time. But this guy, this ex-boxer, that he thinks he knows everything and can nobody tell him anything, he says that that's impossible. When you see it all the time, like you've never seen a guy roll and throw a hook at the same time as he escapes out of the clinch. You've never seen that. You didn't see Terrence Crawford block with one hand and then throw a jab at the same time uh, to Errol Spence's face. I mean, it's basic. Like or one of the most basic one is throwing a jab as you retreat. Throwing a jab as you retreat, you're not really trying to connect. You're not really trying to measure distance. You're trying to keep him away. So just in that simple way, that is a defensive style jab. You're mixing offense and defense in that movement. So this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't care how many years he was boxing. The guy's stupid. And I would challenge him to a sparring session, but I'm pretty sure he's going to say he's too far away. And you know how it is. But another example is, and this guy was actually a professional, and he was he was in the big leagues. I mean, he was like an elite level boxer. And this is why I say that it doesn't matter if you were an elite level boxer. Sometimes you're not. That's not going to translate into you being a good teacher. And in fact, most of the time, it's the opposite. Why? Because the psychology of a fighter is different than the psychology of a good teacher, of a good coach. It's just different. A good coach is like, it's almost like a good impulser. It's a good pusher. You know how to push certain buttons. You know how to make your fighter feel a certain way. You could tell your fighter something, and it's gonna burn a fire inside of him, and he's gonna wanna go out there and kill the other guy. You know, that's another ability that a coach has. You know, that sometimes fighters don't have. But getting back to this guy, I'm not gonna say his name. He's famous. He's a famous boxer. He's recently in YouTube making videos and teaching people, you know, certain things, and I learned a lot from him. So I'm not saying that this guy's a bad coach, but in this particular case, I just don't like when people say this is the only way to do things, and you got to do it the way I do it, especially when the guy teaching you weighs 200 plus pounds, is an ex-boxer, he punches like a mule, and you're telling a kid who's 5'4", right? Probably a little bigger. I'm exaggerating, but he's like let's say he's like five. Let's say he's 5'6" or 5'7". He's barely, you know, growing into his body. You know, he's a kid. Right? He's a kid. And he's just learning how to box, and you're telling him to block the way you used to block. A heavyweight champion. You used to be a heavyweight champion. You were around at the same time when Ali was around. You were with these guys, and you expect this teenager who hasn't even spread it out completely, who doesn't even have his man strength yet, to block the way you block. And then not only that, but you're jabbing at this guy. You're jabbing at this kid. You know, I know you're not doing it in full strength, but let me tell you, bro. Let me tell you, an old man has old man strength. And if you've punched your whole life, and you're against a kid who's just starting, your punches are way harder than his, and you don't even realize how hard your punches are. I know by experience, because I think I'm going easy sometimes, and I'm not. You know, because we're just built differently. Some people are built differently. Okay, so you can't ask a kid to block the way you block. Just the other day, I was teaching boxing with someone, right? And I was telling them to drop their elbows and their body complete together to block a body shot. That way, if they happen to change it up to the head, you'll still be able to block it with the glove, right? So bend with your body, basically. and and, and he said, "Oh, my elbow is hurting. When I block. Why is that? Because everybody's different. Like I'm able to do that over and over again, and it's very rare that my elbows hurt. It's very rare. And if it does, it recuperates within days. But some people just are not able to block that much because they're just built different. They're just small. Their bones are more brittle, and there's no offense to them. It's just people have different strengths. Some people are faster, but they don't have good bone density, and some people are slower, but they hit like a rock. It's just different types, and you have to adapt a style that's going to be better for that person instead of trying to teach them to fight like you. Blocking takes. People think that because you block something that it's fine. No, man, it's not that way. A block, first of all, has to be a strike in itself. This is why, in my opinion, when people say that you can't mix offense and defense, I think those people are stupid because a block has to be a strike in itself. You have to perceive it as a strike. Why? Because you're blocking, but at the same time you're striking his strike, and you're hurting his hands. Right? You practice this. You can practice it on a wooden dummy. You can practice it, on anything. But your blocks have to be strong. Okay, that's number one. Number two, if you're brittle, you either have to work on it or find ways to bend energy away from you, which in boxing is called rolling with the punches. That's all you do, man. But this guy, this heavyweight boxer, who's out of shape, which means that he's heavier than he used to be professionally, was jabbing at this kid and telling him to just keep his hand in front of his face and it's going to be enough. No, it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough because the kid doesn't weigh as much as you do. The kid doesn't have your bone density. The kid is probably never going to have your bone density. He's probably never going to be as big and as strong as you. And he's not going to be able to do what you do. He's not going to be. Imagine if I was to teach people to block like George Foreman. Big ass George Foreman. It doesn't make any sense, bro. It just doesn't make any sense. He blocks the way he blocks because his arms are huge. And he's tall. And if you use that blocking technique, you're not going to be as successful. So, anyways, guys, that is my take on this whole situation. I got to go out here and work out for a little bit. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you.